What's a popular procedure / treatment right now that's not worth the hype?
I think we're sort of phasing out of buccal fat removal, but I still hear about it from time to time. Buccal fat removal is when a little bit of the fat from the cheek is taken out. It's a surgical procedure. Most of the time it comes from inside the mouth, but you can also do it in a facelift approach if you're already doing a facelift. Otherwise, usually you just do it through the mouth. It gives you that sort of higher cheekbone, kind of like tucked in look, like the model look, a very thin face.
Like the gaunt kind of.
But exactly. So you can end up looking gaunt. In particular, not in the now, because most of the time it's a young person who's coming in for this who wants a more defined face. It's when they're older and they lose some of that facial fat and then they really look gaunt, and it's a really hard problem to fix.
It's Sofia Franklyn. You are listening to Sofia with an F, and the F is for phenomenal. Welcome to Sofia with an F. I'm here with my favorite person in the whole world, Dr. Lafer, who is just as intelligent as she is beautiful, because people watch this on YouTube. If you're not subscribed yet, go do it right now. And people are going to see you and be like, that is the prettiest person. It doesn't add up that did you get like your medical degree when you were 12? That's the part. I'm like, were you like a child savant?
Totally. Yeah, I'm only like, 13 years old actually.
No, but that's why it's crazy to me.
Well, it's a long road, but a little bit of Botox helps, sunscreen, all the good maintenance things are important.
I remember telling you, I was like, oh my God, Dr. Lafer, like I don't vape anymore. And you said, oh my God, that's amazing. I have time to put sunscreen on.
I mean, I'm really in it for the long haul with you here, Sofia. We have to start somewhere, and sunscreen is like your number one thing right now.
Sunscreen, I don't know why it took me until 32 years old to be like, okay, now's the time to really start using sunscreen, but I'm doing it. Dr. Lafer, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
I have 783 questions per usual. Every time I go into your office,
I'm like, it.
So we asked the sloots to write in questions that they had, and one of the first ones that I had jotted down was about labiaplasty, and you made it very clear. You're like, so I don't do labiaplasty.
Right.
How does that, so just because you're a plastic surgeon does not mean it's head to toe?
Correct. So I'm an ENT facial plastic surgeon, so I really only do neck up, but there are other surgeons who specialize in other parts of the body, or, top of the head all the way down to the toes.
Okay.
So I do, have thoughts on labiaplasty, and I'm happy to share some of those with you, but I do not actually perform those, and that's not like within my purview. But I would say is if something bothers you and you want to get checked out, see somebody who specializes in that, I think that's a great idea. Just because it's covered up most of the time doesn't mean that you might not want to have it addressed and make sure you're not a candidate for something.
That was so well said. She's going to come in here with just like top to bottom, and I'm going to try to trick her and be like, okay, but labiaplasty or a boob job. And you're going to say, it's not either or. What did I ask you about the vaping thing? Oh, I phrased the question as, if I can only quit one thing, Adderall, vaping, or alcohol. I asked you, and you said vaping, but then you were like, but, and you wanted to give like all these disclosures.
I do. It's part of being a doctor, right? Everything comes with risk benefits, all that stuff. You have to understand what it is.
So is that so stressful to go into something like this, like a podcast, and like, what are you scared like your medical license could? No.
Well, let's just pause for a second. And this is just for information, right? This is just an informational podcast. It's not meant for medical advice. If you have questions about your specific needs or, issues you're having, definitely consult a doctor.
Okay, there you have it. That will be staying in. And that's like me every time I say, I'm not a doctor, but.
Yeah, I know. I've heard you say that before.
Yeah. Which is crazy that I even feel that I would need to let people know.
No, but you do. You have to, because they're not actually giving medical advice here. You're just having an informational conversation.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So what would you say is really trending right now? Because plastic surgery, and I don't know if Botox would be like included in that, but it is so different than when I was growing up. Like girls that are 16 are getting things done now, and that's like a common thing. What would you say is trending?
I think one of the challenges we have now is that everybody's taking selfies, especially our young people. And when you take a selfie, the camera actually gives this wide fishbowl effect. So everyone feels like their nose looks bigger. It deforms what you actually look like. And so it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem that we're seeing as more kids are coming in at a younger age with more insecurities, when the reality is they don't actually look like the pictures that they're taking. And the same goes with Facetune, right? And the other programs that are so easy to manipulate your face, the filters, this, that, the other. And we're really getting a sense of where, I mean, I guess people are just feeling more insecure, like they wish that they could look a certain way and they're not embracing what they look like in this moment. And I think it's a big problem. And you know me in my office, I'll always tell you like what bothers you, why does it bother you? Let's talk about what our options are. And I really like people to feel good about what they look like. And, you know, if we want to tweak things here and there, okay, but we're really not trying to change who people are and what they really look like, at least not like my perspective. And the kids are having a hard time with it. And it's not just the kids, it's the 20-year-olds, it's the 30-year-olds. And then all of a sudden you're aging a little bit more in your 40s and your 50s, and you're seeing yourself on Zoom, you know, during the pandemic when everybody was on Zoom. It was called the Zoom effect, and everyone was racing in to get their plastic surgery because they had downtime, they could be off camera, all this stuff. They weren't traveling for work. And we were seeing a lot of people like, you know, seeking surgery. I have people every day who come in and say, I hate what I look like on Zoom. Like, what can I do?
Wait, this is my mind. My mind is blown. That is the most fascinating thing. So there's an effect that happens when you're taking a selfie. Your face is distorted.
Your face is distorted.
Wow.
It's the fishbowl effect. So it's the same when I take pictures of somebody, or even, you know, just social pictures, I'll like step back. I won't get so close up in their face, even if I want to be in their face. And then I'll put my camera on 2x, and it'll still be a better, like more accurate picture of somebody versus having that like rounded, like bigger in the middle. Mm-hmm. You'll play around with it now. You're going to start, you're going to be like, what about this and this? And even the lens level, the lens is also different. So depending on what size lens you're using on these fixed lenses. Mm-hmm.
And when you take a selfie, at least for me, I think it is 100% indicative and like a representation of exactly what I look like. Mm-mm. Not anymore though. And I can't tell if this is like a good or a bad thing, at least on TikTok.
Yeah.
If you, and I think most people do, have the feature where it's filtered.
Right.
And it won't show other people, like it won't say that they're using it, but your skin and face just looks so much better. Also, the new iPhone, I think, does like some kind of tweaking.
It might. I don't know about the new iPhone.
I don't know. I mean, maybe it does. Like, I don't know. No,
but you feel like it looks better.
It looks different to me than any other iPhone.
Interesting.
But TikTok especially, and I feel like that's where people are spending most of their time is on TikTok, the younger generation. And it's like, I don't know if that's better or worse for their face to have a filter on it 24/7. Because then how do you feel like when you look in the mirror?
I think the problem is, like, not to date myself too much, but when I was growing up, you know, we were really looking at magazines and we were like, okay, well, that's what people wanted to aspire to look like. I grew up in Los Angeles. It can be a challenging place to grow up. I live in New York City now. I'm raising 2 daughters here, you know, so I think about this stuff all the time. And I just remember looking at the magazines and being like, oh, like, why does she look so perfect? And it was a really easy thing for like my mom, my friends, all of us to look at it and go, you know, they've got all these people airbrushing and they're touching things up, and it's so much more obvious, even though these are really beautiful people in the magazines. Now that we're translating that into the TikToks, like just a selfie, the Facetunes, the filters, all this stuff, people aren't really looking at it in the same way as being like, oh, that's a supermodel who has also been touched up, right? We're looking at it like, everybody looks this good.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is we don't, right? And so I think, in my practice, I really try to remind people that they look good and help them feel good with how they look and just, help enhance whatever bothers them.
And you are exceptionally good at that. And the amount of times that I've gone in and I'm like, okay, but what about this procedure? And like, what about this one? And like, should we, do some Botox here? Which, by the way, for those of you who don't know, I went into Dr. Lafer's office a year ago to get earlobe repair. And then I chickened out, and then I ended up just getting Botox because they're like one and the same.
Right.
And
you can basically swap one out for the other. It treats the same problem. Yeah.
And I just feel so safe and so comfortable with you. And I've definitely had times where I go in there and I'm like, okay, my under eye bag's like, let's throw in some filler. And you're like, so let's not.
Yeah.
So like, actually, we're not just going to throw in filler.
Yeah.
And I really, really appreciate that. And I think that's extremely important when you're getting stuff, even if it is just Botox, quote unquote, to go with someone you're comfortable with. But even Botox, because we've normalized this stuff so much, you can change your face with Botox, correct?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like one really good example of it is masseter Botox. So a lot of people are talking about masseter Botox, and that's a big trend, right? So it's nice in some ways because it can slim the face if you're talking about aesthetics. It's really good for people who grind their teeth, who have tried oral appliances, stuff like that. So there are definitely medical reasons for masseter Botox.
Okay.
Like TMJ problems. The downside is if you do too much of it, or if you're not a candidate for it and you slim the face here, you can end up with jowls. Is it permanent? No, right? You let that go. The masseter comes back. It becomes, a more robust muscle. But you're essentially having that scaffolding that's normally sitting at the side of the jaw, and it's going away a little bit, and then you're getting some saggy skin in the jowls. It's a real thing. There's a very particular face shape that it happens to, and you really need to go to somebody who understands facial anatomy and potential consequences. Botox is, and all the Botox similar brands are really wonderful tools that we have, but they have to be used appropriately.
It's like the amount of knowledge, I can't. I could pick your brain for 24 hours, actually. So when people get the gels, does it go away when the Botox goes away?
When the Botox goes away and the muscle comes back, it really happens not so instantaneously. It can happen over time, especially with using too much Botox and really knocking the muscle out too much. It's the same philosophy that I have in other parts of the face. Like, so as you know, I like to see people, I like have a sense of what I want to do pattern-wise for their Botox, and I'll do it, and then I'll have them come back in 2 weeks. And we always talk about how you can put more in, but you can't take it back. And it takes, 3 months for it to totally go away. But you want to do, in my opinion, just enough that you get the effect that you want, but not do it too much. And so it's the same with the masseters. If you're doing the masseters for either aesthetic reasons or for functional reasons, you want to start slow and then add on until you get to the right amount. Lots of things to think about.
I mean, so many things to think about. How many people in this practice tend to be conservative? I know you can't give me like a percentage, but I would assume there's a good chunk that are not conservative, and it's more on the other end, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think you can kind of lose sight of what your goals are as a provider. And even like, I think especially so with filler.
One of my questions here is about filler.
Oh yeah. So we could do a deep dive in filler.
Let's dive right in. All right. Because I've asked you to get it.
I know.
So I need you to once again remind me why I shouldn't. I'm joking, but I feel like it's kind of a recent thing that people are now really coming to terms with the fact that it's maybe not great. I have so many friends that have gotten it that are like, yeah, I wish I wouldn't have. Why is that?
Okay, so filler fills up the face, right? So it's adding volume. I love filler for the right patient. So for the patient who has volume loss, who just needs a little bit here, a little bit there, a little softening, I think it's really nice. To use it as a surgical alternative, I don't think is great. Too much filler distorts what the person looks like. I know we've talked from time to time about various celebrities and how different they look from when they were younger. And I think a lot of it has to do with these non-surgical treatments, like filler specifically. So for me, I always take photos of patients before I do filler, always. Like, doesn't matter if you want filler, doesn't matter how much you hate your photos, you're getting them done or you're not getting the filler. Yeah. Because the truth is you really forget what you looked like.
Oh,
you forget what you look like. And that's the same for everything. But in particular, I find with filler, because they're only small changes, right? In order to see a change, you have to see, for your eye to catch a change, it has to be a 10% difference. So if you do a little bit here, or like a weight, like if you put paper in your hand or anything else, you have to have a 10% difference in order to
really
feel, in order to know that there's a difference.
Okay.
Yeah. So with filler, it can be these little micro changes, and then all of a sudden you're coming back for another syringe, and you're coming back for another syringe, and then suddenly you look like a totally different person. So we talk about tear trough filler, under eye filler from time to time. Tear trough filler is good for a very specific patient, and you also have to understand what the risks are anytime you're ever having procedures. I think you have to understand what those are. Tear troughs, my 7-year-old daughter has, a tear trough. It's normal, but it can get more pronounced as we get older.
Right.
The other side of it is that sometimes as we get older, people have some bags underneath their eyes, and that starts to come out. And that's for a variety of reasons. So your eye shape changes as you get older. There's laxity in the muscles and the ligaments. And then you can have some protrusion of the fat underneath the eyes. So you might be a surgical candidate to remove the bags.
Got it.
As opposed to, filler.
That's so interesting so basically when people get filler done, it's such an incremental change, or at least it should be, right? Each time you go in to get it, that then people are just like, I'm not really noticing the biggest difference. And so they just keep going.
I mean, that can definitely happen. And the other thing that can happen is you can put too much or like overcorrect. Around the eyes, they're super sensitive. Most of these fillers are water loving, which means if you had too much salt, it's going to bring in extra water. You could be extra puffy underneath the eyes. In particular, the eyes are so sensitive. I've also seen people.
Don't drink water.
Yeah, no, not about water. It's about the salt. The salt brings in the water.
I just like saying the most horrifying things that you can in front of a doctor, and then being like, "So actually,
I'm going to drink some water."
That's actually not how that works. I'm like, yeah, I'm just trying to not drink water so I don't put on water weight. You're like, no, you need to drink water.
Yeah, you do, to flush all the toxins out. Yeah, it's good. Water's good.
Water's good.
But I've seen patients years and years after they had filler underneath their eyes with puffiness, and they can't figure out what the puffiness is. I was at a conference a couple years ago, and people started to talk about this because they would have huge workups, MRIs, see an oculoplastic specialist, like really trying to figure out why there's this really puffiness underneath the eyes. It was just filler. It was old filler that had stuck around. So we talk about filler lasting 6 months, 9 months, 12 months kind of thing, on average around 9 to 12 months, but it can linger much longer around the eyes.
And when did we figure that out? Like, because I swear it used to be marketed like you can get it dissolved completely. And
some of them you can. So there's some that are permanent fillers, like a silicone filler, which is really not used anymore in the US. Occasionally you'll see that.
Okay.
You can get hyaluronic acid fillers, which you actually can dissolve, which is great, which thankfully, like my patient, I could dissolve her, and the puffiness went away after years and years of trying to figure this out.
Oh, amazing.
And then there are others that you can't actually dissolve, and you just have to wait for them to go away.
Oh.
And then some linger for much longer than you think.
So there's just filler across the board.
Lots of fillers.
Lots of different fillers.
Lots of fillers.
I like how you said that you think that filler should maybe not necessarily be a last resort, but there's surgical things to do beforehand. And I think for some reason there's a tiny bit of a stigma around like maybe a surgical procedure versus an injection, when in reality these injections are more harmful, not harmful, but will last on your face, like the filler you just talked about.
Yeah, everything comes with risks and benefits and alternatives. And one of the alternatives that I always talk to people about is doing nothing, right? You don't have to do anything. It's really how much something bothers you. And then something we always talk about too is how much time, money, and effort you want to put into any of this, right?
Yeah.
So all of these things have to come together. But I think actually what we're seeing now is that people are doing less filler, less of these like minimally invasive things. And they're saying, I'm putting that aside. I'm just going to wait. And when I'm ready for surgery, then I'll go the surgical route, because they're seeing that they're spending a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort, and they're still not getting to where they want to be.
Right. And I mean, Botox, you have to get that shit done every... Me calling it that shit done. You're like, that was her, not me, every 3 months.
Yeah, so Botox in general, so Botox is a brand. There are a bunch of other brands. We'll call it Botox because I think that's helpful and what people know, but they're neurotoxins, neuromodulators, lots of wrinkle relaxers, lots of names for it. It lasts on average 3 months. For some people, it's a little bit shorter. For other lucky people, it's longer. But for young people who are using it just for, prevention, do it once a year, do it twice a year,
Smart.
Do it when it bothers you. Don't do it more often. That you don't have to stay on top of it as somebody who's a little bit older, who's seeing those etched lines already might benefit from.
What is a good alternative for the under-eye filler?
It depends.
You're like,
it
every
depends.
face is
Every
different.
face is different. Anatomy is different. Age, skin texture. So if one of the reasons is like crepiness underneath the eyes, I really like either a CO2 laser or radio frequency microneedling underneath the eyes. Both of those tend to help really nicely, but it depends on, the skin quality. And I don't think it's so much about age as it is about that individual and their skin quality. But that's one thing that is on like the easier, minimally invasive side that can really make a big difference. But a lot of people talk about dark circles, and dark circles also it's different if somebody has allergies, if they, haven't slept. The reason why a lot of people have dark circles are those two things.
Right.
And surgery is not going to help.
Right.
Minimally invasive things aren't going to help. Filler is not going to help. Some of it's just genetic. As we get older, our skin gets thinner everywhere. Sorry to say, it does.
Yeah.
And we're seeing like the thin blood vessels come to the surface, and that's what gives us the dark circle appearance.
Right. It's like...
So it depends.
It depends. I feel like if I was a doctor or a surgeon, I would get so frustrated with people coming in and being like, okay, but the thing is, I read this somewhere that like this is what I need to be doing. Like you basically just have to... all of your years of schooling be like, so I actually went to school for how many years?
Right, 1,000. 1,001, yeah.
1,001 years. I have a little bit of some insight. It's hard to make sure you get a well-balanced meal in. Thankfully, I have Huel. Their Black Edition ready to drink is a complete meal in a bottle. You guys know I am always on the health and wellness journey. It might not seem like it all the time, but I'm always on the journey. Huel Black Edition makes it easy. They have a perfectly balanced meal in a bottle that I know is healthy. You can have your choice of chocolate or vanilla. The best part, it's low in sugar. The even more best part, it's 35 grams of protein, people. The Black Edition ready to drink also has 27 vitamins and minerals all in one handy bottle. Join the community of Hooligans with this exclusive offer for new customers of 15% plus a free gift using my exclusive code Sofia at Huel.com. That's 15% plus a free gift for new customers using my exclusive code Sofia at Huel.com. Please see the description for the terms and conditions. Unlock a healthier, easier way to eat with Huel. Nutritionally complete meals in minutes so you can focus on what really matters. I received a terminal haircut a while back, and years of growing my hair out were erased, just like that. Ever since, I've been taking my hair health incredibly seriously. Sloots, let me put you on to my holy grail, Nutrafol. Everyone's root causes of hair thinning are different, so a one-size-fits-all approach to hair growth doesn't cut it. Nutrafol has multiple formulas that are tailored to give your hair what it needs to grow throughout different stages, such as postpartum and menopause, as well as for different lifestyles, such as plant-based diets. Enter Nutrafol. My hair is visibly thick with 3 C's and longer and shinier and overall better. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. See thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. Start your hair growth journey with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering my listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code Sofia. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code Sofia. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code Sofia. So you said CO2 microneedling. I want to ask you about, because it's fascinating, the micro, or is it called a mini facelift that people are doing? I'm so cuckoo cuckoo. You guys, I went into your office and said, yeah, so what about, I went in for Botox. I said, what if I just got like one of those like mini facelifts, as if it's like, you know, getting a smoothie. Yeah.
I mean, you said it, I didn't. No. Okay. So facelifts, there's this wide variety of facelifts, and it ranges from like kind of the old school skin only facelift all the way to a deep plane facelift. And there's no like definition of a mini facelift. It's sort of like what the doctor views as as a mini facelift, and what they share with you in terms of like how long it's going to last, what your downtime is, where your incisions are going to be, all those kinds of things. I'll pause for 1 second and just say your face doesn't change. Most people's faces don't change enough until at least their late 40s, and sometimes much after that. Oh. To really, in my eyes, make sense to have a facelift. So it's really in general, your late 40s. My caveat there is that if you've lost a tremendous amount of weight, we're seeing a lot of people with the GLP-1s and still with bariatric surgery and all of that. And if you're a 30-something and, you have a lot of skin in your abdomen, your arms, your legs, everywhere else, you're probably going to have some of that also in your face, right? So for those patients, I think it's, this is an individualized conversation, but I think for those patients, there definitely can be candidates much sooner than my like general thoughts about somebody waiting until their late 40s.
Because I feel like it's mostly for women, this whole concept of aging gracefully, but also doing things to make you feel good. It's hard to like teeter that line. Totally. Would you say, because you see the majority of changes happening in the late 40s, is that when more women are coming in, or because of social media and TikTok and whatever, it's all ages are coming in at all times?
I mean, around aging face stuff, that's definitely more like people are coming to me more like their late 30s, starting to see changes in their eyes in particular. That's the first place that most people who are, have a view on this stuff, that's when they're coming in. And then sometimes they'll start talking to me like you did about having a mini facelift and does it make sense to do? And then we talk about it.
Right.
And the nice thing is, I'm in private practice and I can give as much time, and I can really carve that out to have those conversations.
Right.
I think that's sometimes a challenge. But I think it's important so that you know why and you don't feel dismissed, right?
That's huge. Wait, that's actually huge because I go in there with a list.
Yeah.
And like you will sit there and explain to me.
Totally. Yeah.
Which if you didn't have a private practice, there's like a quota and you have to see this
really
many
hard.
patients.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's the benefit of being the business owner. You can do whatever I want.
Sorry, we just own our own businesses.
Going back to aging gracefully, I think some people get a little kind of anxious around that because they also feel like, well, am I aging ungracefully if I'm trying to help you age gracefully?
Oh, interesting.
So there's a little moment of pause around that now. I think people are starting to feel like aging gracefully is kind of an interesting phrase, but the way that you can age gracefully
but the way you can do
it is sunscreen. More sunscreen. Ooh. I grew up in LA. I love feeling the warmth. I love a beach vacation, but you're going to see me at the beach reapplying sunscreen every 2 hours.
I feel like you're the girl at the beach with also the huge hat.
I mean, I bought a winter hat last year, like this very cool, like brimmed hat right after I got my laser treatments done.
Okay.
And I really vibe with it, but I didn't wear it today.
Oh, you have a winter hat.
I have a winter brim. It's very cool.
But
it's very
when
cool.
You're laying on the beach.
I am wearing a hat.
You've got a hat.
Yeah.
But look at you.
Hat, sunscreen.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Sunglasses.
The
whole nine.
I don't know why the sunscreen. It's such an easy thing to do.
It just has to be part of your routine.
Right.
My husband used to make fun of me because I would wear sunscreen on like a cloudy day in the middle of the winter. When it's cloudy, it's also when you can get a lot of sun exposure.
Right. And you want to hear this is how I was thinking about things, and now I'm trying to shed that way of thinking.
Okay.
I would say, but I look so much prettier
better with a tan
when I'm tan, and it's like,
I know.
What are we doing? Okay, so you're gonna look prettier right now, and then you're gonna pay for it later. And now I'm kind of seeing the light, and I'm like, so that's not really how you should be living.
Listen, everybody has I used to feel the same way, right? Everybody was tan. I was always tan. And now I've got like spots all over my body from being, from being in the sun all the time.
That's it. But we need to get the winter hat out.
You got to get the winter hat out. It's like kind of chic. I feel like you could do
winter hat. It's amazing.
I almost wore it today just to
I'm like imagining like a Kentucky Derby, like a big kind of hat.
You can't get on the subway with that thing.
That's true.
No, the problem is it was like flatten my hair a little bit.
True.
I needed like a little zhuzh.
I'm going to give you a hat that you can use on your way out.
Great.
I don't want to take any chances.
Okay, so I would love that so much.
Can you imagine? I'm like, okay, everyone put your hat on. But I'm laughing now, but it's actually what I should be doing, actually.
I think what it really comes down to is like you still need vitamin D, you still need to enjoy the warm weather, but you just have to protect yourself, right? So instead of sitting out there and baking and waiting until you get like that first burn, because then it'll turn, don't worry, it'll turn. Every time you get a burn, you increase risk of skin cancer, not to mention, the discoloration, that kind of stuff. Also get your skin checked once a year.
Forgot about that little part of it as well.
Yeah, right. No, for the aesthetic stuff and then also the important stuff, right?
Yeah.
You have to think about that.
Yes.
But I think that I'm hoping that we're going to move towards people kind of embracing just the pigmentation that they have, right? Yes, I agree. Like sometimes I'm like, I need a little color, right?
Right.
But be careful.
Yeah. I mean, it's not worth it. Also, with the amount of like self tanner stuff now. It's like we really don't need the sun exposure that desperately.
It's true.
We were talking about filler, but I didn't ask you about lip filler, which you can correct me if I'm wrong, I would say is just as popular as getting a Botox kind of treatment. What kind of lip filler would you recommend? Or recommendations on like getting it for the first time and how to start?
Okay, so I have lots of thoughts around lip filler. And I think lip filler is really nice when done subtly. I think we're spending too much time focusing on lip filler, especially in my younger population and my you population.
Right.
A lot of people want really big lips, very full lips. And what we're seeing 5, 10, 15 years down the line, when people have been doing this for a long time, is it stretches the skin. So the same stuff that we talked about in other parts of your body, it stretches the lips. And then you end up needing potentially some intervention to remove some of that stretched skin.
Why, when I think about lips, I think that they're just like, can go up, can go down, can inflate.
Listen, it's not for everyone.
Because the majority of people are not going to school for years and years and years, like you are. And so we don't really think about what the consequences and long-term effects are. I literally thought lip filler, you don't like it, it just goes away in however many months.
Yeah, and that's true. If somebody, if you do it once, I don't think you're going to stretch the skin in a way that's going to require intervention down the line. But if you're constantly putting more and more filler in your lips, it has the potential of stretching the skin. That having been said, as we get older in particular, people tend to have volume loss everywhere. And one of the places is in their lips. And then what people say is they'll complain like, okay, I put my lipstick on and it sits in the creases and it really bothers me, right? So you can do a hydrating lip for those patients and it's a thinner filler. Ooh. And then somebody who needs volume, use a thicker filler that has more body, and that can help create a really nice shape too. So it really depends on what the needs are, what the anatomy is of the individual.
Right.
And like lip filler can be great, but everything comes with risks, and you should talk to your healthcare provider.
You know what? I'm actually in the description.
Just put it in there.
It will be in bold going across the screen. Yeah. Like the entire time.
Flash. Yeah. Warning.
Right. So there's hydration filler, which is not as intense as the other one because it's just kind of filling in the creases.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll do that with a different technique. So sometimes I'll do it with a needle to kind of give volume and kind of like lift the lip up and lift it out, as opposed to kind of putting filler in and then it just going down or into the mouth.
Okay.
Lip anatomy can be very complicated, but that's like, a really nice like volumizing technique. And when I'm doing it to hydrate the lip to get rid of those wrinkles and stuff, I'll usually use a cannula because it just disperses really beautifully.
I know what a cannula is.
Oh, yeah.
What is that?
A cannula is essentially a needle, but it's blunt. So it doesn't have any like hole at the tip. It has a hole on the side and the filler comes out on the side.
Okay. And so that's what you would be using. I'm like, I cannot sit here and shake my head up and down when you say cannula. I just can't do it.
But needles, you understand. Needles got like, it's got a poke at the end. It's got a hole there. Yeah.
100%. What's worth the money / recovery time? You're going to be like, it depends on the individual. It depends on the individual. Well, actually, let me phrase it this way. If someone wants to get something done, but they're still feeling unsure, what do you tell patients? Like, how do you help them make the decision to either go through with it or to not?
Well, it depends. So, for example, I never want people to feel pressured to do anything, right? Even if it's something minor.
Trust. I know. If anything, you're like, I don't know.
Just wait. Just wait. When you're ready. Yeah. And I think that's really key. If you feel pressured by your surgeon or by your provider, just take a beat and you can always come back later. From a surgical standpoint, I really feel that way. I really, truly, like, those things can't be reversed. Surgery is, you just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other after that. Botox is different, right? Botox is a 3-month trial. It's not stretching the skin.
Right.
You know, I don't worry about major complications. You know, there are potentially some side effects, but it's really like a low risk profile thing. That's an easier conversation to have. Surgery is like, you should come back for a second consult.
Right.
Like, think about your questions. I'll say like, you know, we can set up a virtual if you don't have time to come in. We can review your questions again. I also see people at least twice before their surgery date, and we review all the risks the first time, and then they have time and what their recovery would look like. And then they come back for a pre-op appointment. And then at that pre-op appointment, we review in detail what the recovery looks like and things to look out for. They usually get a little care package of things that they need for their recovery. And there's all these different touch points where it can help people make them feel comfortable and know what they're getting into.
Right.
You should know what you're getting into with any of these surgeries. And if you have questions or you're still thinking about it, it's not right. It's not time.
I can't imagine seeing a plastic surgeon who like didn't have a private practice maybe, and like I went in to get a surgery and they gave me 3.5 seconds to talk to me about it. I would be like terrified.
I mean, listen, so some people in academics have, you know, the time and take the time to do that. And then maybe you see like somebody else for follow-up, or, you know, it really varies. Right. But I think it's really nice to be able to just make sure your questions are answered and make sure your surgeon is accessible.
When you get Botox, assuming you
totally,
of course,
yeah.
Do you do it to yourself?
I will do touch-ups to myself, but I won't do the whole thing because I have a really big forehead with lots of blood vessels.
Baby girl, if you don't think I talked about my big forehead on this show 7,800 times. You know, I saw a plastic surgeon to get a forehead lowering reduction.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I don't think I can go through with that. I'm going to actually get a hair transplant. And this surgeon was like, honestly, I think you should just do the forehead reduction because a hair transplant is very invasive. Yeah. I mean, both of those things are very invasive. I don't know. Because they actually have to cut it open and bring it down, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You don't do?
You know, I think that's not part of my general practice.
Because you know I'm about to ask you
if we should do it. Yeah, tomorrow. I'll sign you up.
Honestly,
you've been thinking about it for a while. I'll bring my stuff
here.
over. I'll just send it down. You know, with the hairline lowering, there's an incision that goes all along the hairline, and that can be prominent.
The incision.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think when I was really thinking about this, and this is before I met you, I would never cheat on you. It was actually this plastic surgeon I met in Vegas. He lives in Chicago.
That's a good place to meet somebody.
100%. I asked him, hey, remember we met in Vegas 8 years ago? You're one of the few plastic surgeons I know. But he said, you know, a lot of people will have their, like, the photos you see photoshopped, like the before and afters.
Totally. I mean, that's just a general problem, I think, with before and afters. On my photos, I always write, like, you know, untouched, because it's for some reason, I feel like you have to write that these days.
Well, I don't believe any photo I see. Any photo, anywhere, anytime. Yeah. So I think that's actually, like, really smart that you would clarify that.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it really difficult, you know, and even, you know, I've seen some things that I'm like, I know that's not real. Right. You know, and I've seen the after in real life, and it's not the real after.
That's a little bit
it can be jarring. Yeah.
That just reminded me, and then we're going to jump in. People wrote in specific questions for you that look phenomenal, but that just reminded me there's a difference between, because my friend works for a skincare company for SkinCeuticals. Yeah. And like you can, I don't know if you can perform surgery, but there's a difference between like a plastic surgeon.
Yes. So there are aesthetic aesthetic surgeons.
Right. This is what it was.
And there is board certification for plastic surgery, which is very specific. And there's board certification for facial plastic surgery, which is very specific.
Right.
And then there's like a whole host of other aesthetic surgery certificates or certifications that to the lay person sounds really good, but they actually don't have the training that somebody who has been trained in either general plastic surgery or facial plastic surgery has.
That's what it was. And I remember when she told me that.
Now I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
and it can be a little frightening. Yeah.
I mean, that's alarming, right? Because I don't know what certification necessarily to look for, but can you tell me one more time what to look for?
Yeah, so you're either board certified in facial plastics, or facial plastic surgery, or in plastic surgery. But the aesthetic surgery or aesthetic plastics, like anything that isn't very specifically plastic surgery or facial plastic surgery, might be something to look into before you go and see that doctor.
I think it's
a good PSA.
That's a major, huge PSA, a really good one.
Mm-hmm. And sunscreen, for example.
I don't know. I believe this whole sunscreen myth. I'm just kidding. You're about to be like, I didn't say that. Similar to when I first moved to New York. From Utah. I'm from Utah.
Right.
And I thought it'd be funny. I got invited to go on this boat, and I thought it would be funny to tell everyone on the boat I thought the Statue of Liberty was like a urban legend.
I have no words for you. It just tickles me. Like, I love this.
And everyone was like, what in the Utah girl is this? I'm like... Sorry, I'm not, conspiracy theory is Statue of Liberty and sunscreen. No, sunscreen, I'm going to make sure I wear every single day.
I feel like we got you off the vaping, and so now I'm like onto the sunscreen.
And
what's next? I mean, there's like, let's make a list. We'll just like check through them.
When it comes to you, I am Play-Doh, and you can mold me however you want. You know how long people have been telling me? My mom has told me to stop vaping 783 times. For some reason, that day, like the way you said it, I was just like, yes. Can I read you some
I'm ready.
questions?
I'm ready.
Okay. This is going to be really fun. And we can just go rapid fire and just boom.
Let's do it.
You're like...
It's never rapid fire.
With the disclosures. I'm like, okay.
Lots of disclosures.
Best recommendation for removing hyperpigmentation from the face.
Okay, so this depends on what kind of hyperpigmentation it is. So it can be like a post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, like for example, if you had acne and then got sun on the acne scarring, and you can end up with an inflammatory reaction that causes hyperpigmentation. For example, you can have hyperpigmentation from melasma, which is this patchy sort of brown spots that can be typically on the face, on the cheek rather. Sometimes it can be on the upper lip, which can be very difficult, and sometimes the forehead, but really mostly you see it on the cheek. That can be a really big challenge, and that's more of like a long-term problem that you have to monitor. It gets worse at hormonal time, so when you're pregnant, that gets a lot worse, and then it tends to go mostly away, but sometimes it sticks around afterwards. Working with your board-certified dermatologist is the right place for that. But the things that you can do at home, number one, sunscreen.
Guys,
it's just all coming back.
I know.
You should just title this podcast Why You Need Sunscreen.
You know, it's going to be sunscreen sponsor,
right.
question mark. And I'm going to just say DM me.
Yeah, exactly. So love sunscreen for that. And then it depends, right? So there's lots of treatments that work depending on what it is. So sometimes it's a steroid cream if there's this inflammatory reaction. Other times there are topical things. Sometimes some specific lasers work, but when you get lasers, you really have to make sure you're working with somebody who knows the lasers well. And I would go to a doctor if you have melasma, because it's a much bigger deal than it is just like a sunspot, for example. So then there's also like sunspots that can be treated more broadly with lots of different lasers. I also find that people who have melasma tend to have darker pigmentation, which is even harder to get rid of the melasma. And so you really want to be with somebody who's super comfortable treating it.
My mom had on the upper lip, and it took. So I remember she would complain about it for years.
Totally.
Now it's gone. I don't know what she did, but I remember that being like a persistent thing. Ooh. What's the most common treatment requested by women? Well, actually, let's do for men. They were women and men.
Oh, all right. In my practice, the most common thing for men is rhinoplasty.
Oh, interesting. More than Botox?
Definitely. Yeah. Like most of the men who come into my practice are like young men and, older men too. They can't breathe. And so because I'm an otolaryngologist by training, I really like to mix form and function and make sure that the function is like number one. If you can't breathe through your nose, then it doesn't matter how cute your nose is, you're going to be miserable, right?
Right.
So we always have to make sure that people can breathe through their nose. So they usually come to me for that. And then we judge them up too.
And then we judge them up. That's so cool. Yeah. So cool. I mean, rhinoplasty, but like the fact that you can perform that is just really fucking dope. Oh, laser treatments like Moxie and Halo.
Both of them are great treatments. Again, it depends on your skin type. It depends on what your goals are. Some of them are better for like particular skin types. So if you have light skin, almost everything works well for you. Darker skin types, like you're on the darker scale of that.
Right.
You really have to be careful because you can get that hyperpigmentation that your other question came from afterwards if you weren't treating it correctly at the right settings and stuff like that.
So I was today years old when whatever you just said. I thought that the lighter the skin, you're more susceptible to getting skin cancer, right?
Also true. Yes. Lighter skin, light eyes, more susceptible to skin cancer.
Okay. I thought that for some reason also meant if you have like darker, then you're less susceptible to getting melasma. Okay. See, the more I just need to wear sunscreen, guys, and that's it.
That's it.
Period.
It's a catch-all. It solves all the problems.
I know. I'm realizing very quickly.
You see why I harp on this with you? Yes. It takes me longer to convince you to do these things, but it's worth it.
It is.
And for all your listeners out there too.
I know. Now I'm fully on board.
You drank the Kool-Aid.
I drank the Kool-Aid. Good. It's all that free time from not vaping. Now I can really give that energy where it needs to go. What's a popular procedure / treatment right now that's not worth the hype?
I think we're sort of phasing out of buccal fat removal, but I still hear about it from time to time. Buccal fat removal is when a little bit of the fat from the cheek is taken out. It's a surgical procedure. Yeah. Most of the time it comes from inside the mouth, but you can also do it in a facelift approach if you're already doing a facelift. Otherwise, usually you just do it through the mouth. It gives you that sort of higher cheekbone, kind of like tucked in look, like a model look, a very thin face.
Like the gaunt kind of.
But exactly. So you can end up looking gaunt. In particular, not in the now, because most of the time it's a young person who's coming in for this who wants a more defined face. Okay. It's when they're older and they lose some of that facial fat. Right. And then they really look gaunt, and it's a really hard problem to fix.
Ooh, that's
really hard
to know.
So there are some people who have very round faces and they are a candidate for it, and it's not going to make them look more aged as they age. But I think it's a little bit overdone.
Yeah. Also, it's like the people that have round faces, I've heard that will be
youthful.
Something you love, right? Later on.
Yeah, very youthful.
I don't know if this is the same as like the micro mini facelift, but I asked you, is it the ponytail? There's so many.
Lifts? Oh.
The thread lifts. Can you please just explain that one more time? Because That was fascinating.
Yeah, so thread lifts are essentially dissolvable threads or sutures that get put underneath the skin, and it lifts the jowls, it lifts the soft tissue. Some people do it in the eyebrow to get that like kind of cat eye look as well. I'm not a huge fan of the thread lifts. I think some people do it really well, and for, you know, those are the people that you want to kind of like focus on and see whether this could be an option for you. The downside of the thread lifts is it doesn't last very long. For some people, they don't feel like they get any benefit from it. It can be uncomfortable to do, and mostly it doesn't last long. You can see it sometimes puckering underneath the skin. That's also a problem. I've seen them from other providers. I've seen them come through the chin, through the mouth, and I just couldn't really justify kind of offering that in my practice. I think I've seen too many people be dissatisfied with it, that it's not something that I offer.
Yeah. From what you just said, 100%. This has been incredible. I just learned so much. I had no idea. By the way, I am her walking work of art.
I mean, when you start out so beautiful, it's hard to make it any better.
I'm just saying, like, you guys said it, not me. I'm a living testament to Dr. Lafer's genius. I've gotten Botox from you, and it's like the best shit I've ever done, and I will only get Botox from you. And I finally got the earlobe repair. Yeah. So Dr. Lafer is the best. I will die on that hill. And you guys know where to find me, Sofia with an F, Franklyn with a Y. And Dr. Lafer, thank you again.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Sloots, I'll talk to you next week. Bye.